So thank you for joining me, Paul. And one of the reasons why I wanted Paul to come on this session today is so that we can address and discuss some honest issue around transparency and use of certain chemicals in baking. So this discussion started because Cindy Moyle, our global business development manager, posted something on oxidizing agents. And for those who are not involved in the baking industry, it sounds chemically, like why do we need a bunch of chemicals in bread products, right? So so Paul made a comment and I made a comment back, and I felt that I think it's time someone from the baking industry actually reached out to someone on the street who knows nothing about commercial baking or industrial baking and really have a frank conversation on why we do the things that we do. So that's why Paul is here today. And that's why Paul is going to put me to task on answering these questions. Paul, welcome.
Yeah, thank you very much, Lynn.
Yes, Paul, tell our audience a little bit about your background. Where do you come from? Because you're not obviously a food-based entrepreneur or, you don't do anything with food products. What have you done in your experience?
Yes, absolutely. So I have nothing to see with the agro business, nothing to see with the food industry, nothing to see with the chemistry industry, somehow maybe, because I'm an engineer by training. I'm an oil and gas dirty guy.
Okay.
Worked about 20 years.
Engineer with oil and gas knows nothing about food, right? Just want to make sure people know that.
Basically, absolutely. So I'm your perfect, candid, naive breeder. So, however, in addition to being an entrepreneur, I've been working and living all over the world in the past 20 years. I'm French, for the people who don't know, and also Colombian. And I've been living the essential part of my career in Asia and in South America. So my link to baking or to food is I'm a gastronomy fan, enthusiast, pretty serious hobbyist cooker, and also baker. And the background of my reaction is I'm a very, very radical advocate of natural, organically grown, back to countryside peasantry. And I kind of discovered those concepts a long time ago in Italy, in a place called Abano, where they have something that they call the kilometer zero food. And I'm also a practitioner of yoga, very versed and interested into Ayurvedic things, where basically the philosophy is you as a human being or a living being, you are what you eat. And so every single thing that you ingest is going to become you. And that led me to a particular doctrine or approach on food, and in particular on bread. To me, bread is one of the most sacred food. It's really a civilization witness. I mean, it's animals eat, but they do not ferment and create food. And bread is one of the most ancient elaborated process with alcohol, right? So to me, there is a particular sacred thing around bread. And by the way, Lynn, as you know, bread is a big part of religions across the world. So to me, it's really a specific food, and in today's world, it's becoming part of the industry. And this is why I reacted to your post, because I defended the view that bread is flour, crushed cereals that are, of course, you can make into bread, water, and salt. And so I was very interested to exchange with you on to which direction the industry and the mass production is going versus what I defend, which is local production, biodiversity on wheat, and I'm remote from having your knowledge and science in grain science and all of this. But what I know is people who grow a cereal in their land, that cereal becomes itself by the sun and the water, and then you transform it into bread. And to me, that's the core of health. And I would like to understand what's your vision on how can industry match with that? Because personally, I don't think it can. But I'm all in to listen, you know, and maybe to understand there are some things that I might not properly guess. So in the terms of your oxidizing agent, or I don't really understand how can the industry be compatible with a natural bread process? And that's what I'm very interested to understand.
Right. So, wow, that's just a lot, right? So, if you have time, we are going to take a trip down memory lane of bread production. Okay. So, it's nice and all because what you said, there is a market for it. And where I thrive, there is a market for that as well. I don't think necessarily the people that appreciates your style of bread would appreciate my style of bread, and vice versa. So the way I look at it, these are two separate markets. The artisans, the long ferment, the sourdough that is priced at a higher price point and home bakers treasure it fully, and the mass manufacture of bread products that gives accessibility to families with lower wage or in the poverty level, accessibility to cheaper sustenance. So I don't believe these two are interconnected. I believe these two are separate and there are separate markets to it. And that's how I view this. And one of the reasons I want to bring you down the road on why we do the things that we do. And I don't necessarily agree 100% that it's done right, but I just want to share with you what we've been doing. So when we first start, everybody was like what you said, artisanal bakers, right? So we did 24, 36-hour ferments, sourdoughs, you know, amazing flavor profile, amazing aroma. You know, I guess artisanal bakers in certain parts of the world, like France, like Germany, they have laws. You know, they have laws on when you can work and when you can get up, when you can, you know, bake and how you define your product. So that particular market of artisanal bread never really grew. It never really serviced the majority of the populations. You know, it never serviced the densely populated areas of the world. You know, that's why you don't see these products in a lot of the densely populated areas of the world. So what I'm trying to say is how the industrialized manufactured products evolved in the US was especially during the industrial age, where we found the ability to make bread on a mass scale using horizontal bar mixers. And this horizontal bar mixer evolution here in the US especially gave rise to all these other opportunities of making bread a cheaper product so that we can feed more people, because that's the problem in most of the world, most densely populated parts of the world, is how do we feed a population? You know, it's almost a government issue, you know. Where I grew up in Singapore, you know, the government actually has an ownership in the bread production facility, you know, so they really understand it's their duty to feed the people and to feed the people affordably, you know. But in the US, it's you know, it's an open market, it's capitalistic, so it was led to go by itself, right? So what most American bakers have done is they have looked to its innovation to make sure that bread is produced effectively, efficiently, and at a lower cost point. Unfortunately, okay, because it's such a capitalistic environment, we have found ways to enhance oxidation, to enhance aging, to enhance fermentation, you know. So we have found ways to introduce what we call chemicals into the baking process that is actually food safe. You know, everything that is used in the baking industry is food safe. You know, so that is the long story I just gave you. You know, in terms of why we use chemicals in bread, my question back to you is, why do we call these chemicals? Why do we call these chemicals? Why don't we call salt sodium chloride? Why don't we call fat, you know, triglycerides? Why don't we call vinegar acetic acid? You know, it's, to me, it's nomenclature. It's what you call it. It's not really, you know, a bad thing. You know, chemicals are not a bad thing. Chemicals are in everything. You know, one of the best chemicals that is so widely used in the industrial setting is sodium chloride. It's salt. You know, you're in petroleum, you know. You know, you use salt in everything. De-icing, you know. Guar gum, you know, is used in oil drilling, you know. And when someone from the oil industry comes to the food industry and says, why do you use guar gum? It's used in the oil industry, you know. Why are you putting that in food? And all of a sudden everybody's like, oh my God, we can't use guar gum in food, it's used in the oil industry. You know, a lot of the so-called chemicals have been used in food for a long time before it's used in other industries, you know. So my point of view on this is, we can't go and tell people that these chemicals are not food safe, whereas these chemicals have been used in food for the longest time, since the industrial age. I mean, we talk about oxidizing agents, we talk about potassium bromate, we talk about azodicarbonamide, we talk about ascorbic acid. Their function in food is to oxidize bonds, you know, to reduce bonds and to make it stronger, you know. And through chemists, through food chemists, we're able to find better ingredients to do that, so that we can effectively and efficiently produce more bread in a shorter time. So from a, you know, a society's point of view, we are actually making food not expensive. We're not making food cheap. You know, we're just not making food like how would you expect an artisanal baker to make. Now, I know that this makes a lot of artisanal bakers mad, because they can't compete with $2 loaves. They can't compete with $3 loaves, while their loaves are at, you know, $3, $4, $5. But I feel like these are two separate markets altogether, you know. And I feel like the attack on oxidizing agents, the attack on clean label, means that everybody should go clean, where there is no evidence where these oxidizers actually causes ill health, or these chemically sounding names actually creates cancer, right? So my position on all this is, Paul, I'm very passionate about baking, and I'm very passionate about making food accessible to people, and not you know, locking them out, because not everyone can be like us. we can go to a bakery and we can afford $5-6 organic sourdough loaves, you know, whereas the average to middle class Americans, they can't do that. They have to buy 3 to 4 loaves of bread a week to feed their families, and they can't afford to spend more than $2. You know, so I wanted you to come on today to understand and to explain to you really, rather than to be a keyboard warrior, that the reason why we do the things that we do in the industrialized bread scene is so that we can continue to make food accessible to people. You know, so we do use chemically sounding names like azo dicarbonamide, which, you know, a lot of bakers are actually moving away from ADA. We do use things like datum. We do use things like SSL, which are emulsifiers in dough so that it can process better. Okay. But also know that there is a pushback on these emulsifiers, not because they're not food safe, just because people don't recognize them. You know, they don't recognize the chemical structure. If it were me and if I was FDA, I would have called these things emulsifier 1 and emulsifier 2. You know what I mean? Because who came up with the word salt? Who came up with the word vinegar? You know, if you were to label these things onto your bread label or food label, and you would label everything chemical sounding on your food label, it would look really different. But somehow the other, the naming nomenclature with the scientific part of food is not equivalent, or it's not comparable to things like, you know, people recognize or understand. And in all actuality, everything that we use in the bread and ingredient side of things is found naturally in food already. You know, emulsifiers are found naturally, oxidizers are found naturally. So, you know, it's really a fine line between what you call natural and what we call, you know, processing aids. So, you know, I'm not giving bakers an excuse. I'm giving bakers, you know, giving you a reason why bakers tend to fall back on these kinds of processing aids. Now, I don't know if you, after learning all about this, are if you're willing to eat, you know, a loaf of, you know, white pan bread, and why
No,
not?
no. That's exactly the kind of explanation I was kind of expecting from the industry side of food. So there is several reactions that I could potentially draw some reflection line for the public along what you said. Um, well, immediately, I don't buy bread. That's the bottom line. And I usually I don't buy anything where there is more than 5 things I don't understand in them. Because of course everything is natural. Plastic is natural, radioactive products are natural, and that's not because they're natural that we eat them. I mean, uranium is perfectly radioactive. You're not going to put this on the food of your kids, are you? Although it's natural. So yes, nature has a bunch of things that are toxic, detrimental to life. Uh, some plants are poisonous, some animals are venomous. So nature doesn't necessarily mean harmless. And on this, we fully agree. Now, what I believe is, again, on the philosophy that we become what we eat, that is produced by the sun, by the water, by the planet in a careful balance and interaction with the living beings, you don't really understand what I believe is the industry doesn't really measure on just 150 years, but with an acceleration over the past 50 years. Although you say there is a lot of track record, I actually believe there is not. Homo sapiens is on the earth for 200,000 years. That's a track record of eating salt that, by the way, we can find in a dry water ponds near the beach. We try, we taste it. We eat this for 200,000 years. It's part of the minerals that we need to balance the electrolyte in our body. 150 years that you're talking about since the Industrial Revolution, this is not a track record. And part of my thought there is I believe there is a lot of disease, sicknesses, troubles that are civilizational right now that are due to the eruption of the industry in our food. The second thing I would like to react on what you said that it's something that actually maybe with the European philosophy we find a bit shocking, is that constant association of food with money. Of course, I'm not saying that money is not related to food, because basically that's the fundamental need of a home, is to have the resources so that they can eat. And especially in our capitalist world, you don't have money, you don't eat. We are far from the farming societies or the rainforest societies where you have a more balanced interaction with your food and your environment, and money is not the issue. It's more the collective work to provide the food to the collectivity that is at stake. And in our societies, we don't have this anymore. And I'm not saying that we should. I'm just saying that this is a fact. And you say that people cannot afford to have good bread. And actually, I'm biased because I say good bread, which infers that the industrial bread is bad. It is, because I'm pretty certain that if you give to people a bread at an equal price, I would be surprised they take that loaf that looks like sponge, has no taste, and is going to mold and look rotten the next morning or completely dry. But maybe there is, and I understand that across the world, there is a different approach to bread. Of course, there is a civilization of the wheat, there is a civilization of the tortilla, there is a civilization of the naan, of the roti, like we speak in the Malay world and the Indian world. But all of this is bread. It's basically a grain pounded with water and heated up. And why would the poor people have no choice but eat something that is not right? What I believe the advocacy should be is the reverse. I'm not saying that your path and your drive behind your business is criticizable. It can be criticized. You want to offer more food at a more affordable condition to more people across the world, and that's part of solving the hunger problem. What I believe we should do is drive the profit and the business out of the essential necessity of the food for people. And to me, bread is the fundamental food. And so we shouldn't be condemned to eat a bad, cheap, full of additive to make it cheap and to make more profit for the industry, because Lynn, with all due respect, I don't believe the driver for the industry is to make food affordable. I think it is to produce the maximum amount of goods in a minimum amount of time so that the profitability of this cycle is higher. And
I don't disagree with that statement. Yeah.
It happened, and as you know, and I'm not as professional as you are, but I mean, like anybody who has read, we know that diabetes, cholesterol, a lot of cardiovascular diseases are also tied to what we call in French the malbouffe. Industrial, low quality, saturated fats, and a lot of things like this that are in cheap food, right? And there is a social, unfortunately, anthropological inequality due to the access to food. And so I'm not going against the industry because it is there. My reaction on LinkedIn is around stop telling to people that this is great. It's not. It is what we have and what can be afforded by some. We all know there is low-cost supermarkets selling food that is almost no food. We know there are cheese that have not a single molecule coming from milk. And it's cheese, and people are eating it when truly it's plastic. So how is their DNA, mitochondria, cells processing this plastic to make their body, to make their genetic patrimony? I don't know. But I believe a lot of genetical disease, a lot of, we talk about allergies, autoimmune problems, there is a school of thought that say that this comes from this bad food, or this food that is unnatural, or maybe it's not a good word, maybe we should say processed food. With the intervention of science and process and chemistry, when I'm very sorry, when you make a pancake at home with your mother, or roti, flour, water, yes, this is chemistry, but it's not industrial process. So I absolutely do not believe that we cannot make food affordable for people. What I believe is, and this is why there are regulations in Europe about bread, we have to control the industry and tell them, you must put in your paper what exactly is in your bread. Because I believe, Lynn, and I'm going to give you back the words, but I'm certain that many, many people do not know that their bread that they believe is even artisan bread is full of additive. Actually, I spoke in the margin of this debate with a friend of mine yesterday, who is also on LinkedIn, and she told me that she thought that the baguette tradition in France is just bread and sourdough. It's not. Even in the controlled sourdough bread in France, you still are allowed to put about 30 additives, and people do not put it in that. So what I'm a militant of is display what you do and let your customer choose. I don't like the atmosphere to make people believe that this is a natural, traditional product that is good for your health, when actually I believe it's not.
I agree with that too. I mean, at no point did I say that, we should not talk about it, because we do talk about it.
And that's what we're doing now.
Yeah.
Truly together, this is exactly what we're doing now. And this is why I think that your attitude to debate is absolutely remarkable, because it's about a pedagogy. Because what I'm a militant of is people to be able to make an informed choice. What I reproach to the industry is making people believe that they have no choice, when it's not true.
I totally agree. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, label it. I'm a big proponent of labeling GMO products. I'm a big proponent of putting, enzymes onto labels. I mean, let's be transparent and let's educate people. Are those really bad for you? For people like you say, yeah, I'm going to keep away from that. I'm more than happy to put, $5-6 per loaf. I can afford that. That's fine. That's your prerogative. I don't see it a huge deal for me to buy bread with SSL on it, with enzymes on it, with GMO products on it. I do not see it a big deal. So I will pay a cheaper price for my products, but it's my money, right? And it's your money. So you can afford to buy whatever you want to buy. And I agree with that. Let's be transparent with our things, but let's be educated on the fact. Let's not fearmonger. Let's not tell people those chemicals are bad for you. Those emulsifiers are bad for you, because they are not. And I disagree with you on that part, as in, the stuff that we put in our food are bad for us. It's not, so, and we can go down the rabbit hole between you and me on what's bad, what's good. And you can bring up lots of unrelated evidence that such and such cause cancer, such and such cause allergies, such and such cause all these other health issues. I can also bring out a whole bunch of studies that show there are all these other environmental, human activity that causes all these kind of stuff, so, that's why I'm a big advocate about talking about things like that, about being transparent, about showing, where ingredients come from, to making people understand, let's not be fearful of some of what we call chemicals, like acetic acid, like citric acid, like fumaric acid. Let's not be afraid of those, So, part of my teachings and why I want to share the knowledge the way I want to share, it's not to push this down people's throat. It's to teach people why we use these as, preservatives in the first place. The most effective preservative is acetic acid. Whether you derive it naturally or you derive it, through a chemical fermentation process. It's citric acid biochemically. You can't go wrong there, whether it's derived from nature or derived from the plant. It is so important to use this vinegar to preserve things, so people need to understand the science behind that. Take a walk down the science journey and understand where these things come from, how our bodies break it down, how it gets rid of it, and a lot of things that people don't understand, that preservatives. Okay, I am not a big opponent. I'm not a big proponent. I just want to talk about calcium propionate. Okay, a lot of people say, I don't want preservatives in my bread. I don't like calcium propionate because this sounds bad, right? Calcium propionate keeps the mold away. Basically, mold does not grow in anything that has calcium propionate. Does that make calcium propionate bad? No, it is not harmful to humans. Calcium propionate is when you consume calcium propionate in that really small amount, really small amount in most bread, your body breaks it down to calcium and propionic acid. You absorb the calcium and you get rid of the propionic acid. So that's how the body breaks down most chemicals, right? Does the body react that way all the time? For normal people like you and me who probably won't have any health issues, yes, we react like that all the time. But it does not react like that to some people who are on medications, who can't metabolize properly, who have other issues, right? So whatever works for us, the normal people, may not work for the people who are on medication, right? So, but those people who are not as healthy as us, who are not as lucky as us, might need to take care of the health more than just calcium propionate. You know what I mean? They need to take care of the health more than just, avoiding chemicals or avoiding preservatives. They need to actually consume whole foods that are not frozen, processed, just raw, natural, cooked from scratch kind of food.
Which I can believe we all have to.
No, that's where you and I disagree.
No, but because
you and I disagree. And scientific evidence would support that our bodies can take more and can break down more as long as we're healthy. I'm talking about healthy individuals. We can take more in, than the ones that are not healthy.
So you're basically telling me that the food I should choose depend on my health. No, food should be okay for you, whoever you are.
Why shouldn't that be? If you have an immune disorder and you can't digest certain foods, yes, your health depends on the food that you consume.
That's what I'm saying, and I believe that those, and there is actually a couple of studies or records on that a lot of those troubles are precisely coming from the fact that the bodies of those people cannot take the processed food. So we cannot take the argument that processed food is the same just because our machine can process it. No, it should be tailored for the average human being. I mean, when you take an apple in the orchard, you're not wondering if this apple is good or not for you. You just take it and you eat it, right? So again, to me, it's something where, unfortunately, and I mean, it's not who is right or who is not right, but I mean, this is a line where we cannot agree at all. For example, the argument that these products, chemically processed additives, are harmless, I don't believe in it. There is a polemic currently going on in France, and pardon me if I don't know properly the name in English, but it's the nitrate salt in the cold meat, in the pork, to make hams and things like this for conservation and the color so that it's well rosy and beautiful. It was allowed in France in the 1970s, and now it's fully recognized that it metabolizes with the iron in the meat, and it's carcinogenic, period. And so right now, the industry people are taking it away massively. So it was okay for 40 years until it's not okay. Absolutely no one across the entire earth is saying anything about salt and pepper or whatever we put in our food because the track record is far longer. So again, I think we cannot agree there. What we can do is, I mean, as a science guy, what you say makes absolute sense. I mean, a molecule of water is a molecule of water, whether you combine it by putting oxygen and hydrogen together or whether it comes from a spring. However, I would say something about the food and the plants that to kind of give to also people who listen to us a food for thought. As you know very well, and you're very more versed than me in chemistry, that it's a long track record of my studies, but we know that molecules can be the same, and they are stereoisomeric. How do you call it in English?
Yeah.
The chirometry of the molecule is different. And so the way your body uses it might not be the same. And I know, for example, in essential oil, there are some variety of plants that produce one polymer or one organic molecule, and the same variety of plant in another country, another place of the earth, produces another one, right? So biodiversity is going to combine both kinds of molecules, where the chemical process in your industry is going to give you only the same. And it's an argument like this that I believe makes sense about why an industry process thing is not the same. Salt that is made chemically or salt that comes from the sea is of course not the same, because you say it's calcium, it's sodium chloride. Yes, but in the sea salt, there is also a bunch of other micro trace of oligoelements and niobiums and other rare earth that we need. So my point here in the industry is the industry doesn't give you that. And that's a fact. And I'm not saying it's bad or it's good. What I'm saying is it doesn't give it to you. And I think that as human being and living being in balance with our environment, we need the biodiversity and the complexity that nature gives us. That's where I want to come, Lynn. I think I want to educate people on the fact that they need to be far more serious, stringent, and demanding with what they eat. And the truth is, because they are driven by economy and sort of slaves of the industry and uneducated into that, they just eat something, put them in their mouth, and they do not understand that there is a conscious act that contributes to their life. You understand? So it might sound very big what I'm saying, but to me it is the true nature of health. And if you got the health, you got a life, you got a future, and you're in the quest of happiness. So to me, the industry is guilty of cheating on people by telling them precisely what you say, which is like, yeah, don't worry, it's fine, it's study, we know what we're doing, it's just for your good. It's not. And this is where we can't agree, Lynn, although we have a very friendly and fun and open conversation. But I think the purpose of today's debate is not maybe to agree on a common line, because I don't think we would, but it's actually to give your public, mine, whoever who has the interest to go at BAKERpedia, the understanding that yes, there is a debate. And in that sense, what you're doing with BAKERpedia is fantastic, because although you're an advocate of the industry, you still give the opportunity in a free democratic world to your listeners, to your people, to have access to my voice. And I'm so thankful about that.
Important.
You know, Lynn.
That's important. We
in that
need
sense,
to
you're great.
Yeah, we need to get connected with people who are not in this industry, who don't understand this industry. We need to hear from your point of view on what the future should look like for the rest of the industry. I don't 100% agree with how bakers bake these days, but again, to your point, it's all focused on the bottom line. It's all focused on profits, right? Personally, I would like to see more fermentation happening. I would like to see more aged wheat being used, but Lynn Carson alone can't move that needle. It has to come from the consumers. And that's why I will continue to have all these conversations with people like you, because I want to hear, and I want the bakers to hear. You know, it's not something that I fabricated. It's not something that that came from one of my dreams. It's actual people talking and actual people demanding, you know, honest and true food, you know, being processed for them, being made for them. I really do think that there is a point that we can come to agree that food can still be affordable, made the way that you want it to be made on a mass scale. I haven't seen anyone doing it, but I think it's possible based on science.
Here
You know?
we agree. We
Yeah.
absolutely agree, Lynn. And I think that the truth is, for example, I do absolutely believe that the population of an entire city can eat proper bread, naturally baked, fermented, and make in proximity and in close relation with the country peasants, the people producing the cereals. I believe it's possible. And here, maybe we have a way to enrich the debate. Because I know that BAKERpedia talks to this huge world of people earning their life from bread. We're talking about the bakers, the bakery, the shops, and all of this. And I agree with you that this thing is market driven. As long as there are some people to buy a chemically additive sponge in Lidl or Walmart or wherever. I live in Mexico. One of the biggest baker here is Bimbo. I never ever get their bread in my caddy, but plenty people do, and they are free to do so. And I'm not a militant in the shop telling him, oh, you shouldn't buy Bimbo. Well, you buy it, that's your life, and it's market driven. So the entire purpose of such conversation today is maybe to sensitize people on the fact that for your commercial baker public, they might understand that yes, you might earn money by doing your bread traditionally. And if you have, because you're talking about the $6 or $7 sourdough bread, I have two objectives about that. The first one, why is it $7? Because it is so good that it became some form of a luxury good when it shouldn't. The bread should be for the poor man. And during centuries, the bread has been the only food. So how come the only food become the rich man things? It's because good things are becoming scarce in this
Oh
world.
my gosh, you're right.
Yeah, because look every single country, the poor man's dish becomes the snob dish. The pizza. The pizza basically is the leftover of the bread where you put a little bit of tomato and it becomes a fantastic thing across the world. I mean, the stew, the tortilla in Mexico is the lowest, cheapest, poor man's food, and it became elevated to something great. Okay? So to me, the $7 became a luxury, and it's a snobism to buy sourdough, and it's a business in itself when it shouldn't. Because if everyone in Los Angeles or Portland, Oregon, starts to say, you know what, Mr. Walmart, I want sourdough bread tomorrow, Walmart is going to make sourdough bread the way people want. And obviously, with the mass production, the price is going to come down with the competition. I also believe in France, and I'm very passionate about that, Lynn. Again, you're a specialist, you're a doctor in cereal. You know that the cereals have been selected, GMOs, and right now there is
No
basically in
GMO wheat.
France
No GMO wheat yet.
one kind of wheat in the entire France. And whoever wants to go into spelt, whatever old varieties, they can't even exchange the seeds because it's illegal in France. I mean, this is a complete nonsense. And I mean, I'm adamant, and we are part of a group of people who are fighting as strong as we can against this nonsense. We think that biodiversity should be there. No one wants a team of humanity and mankind made of clones. We want diversity of mankind. You come from Singapore, I'm French Colombian, and we interact in different lands where we bring our intellect and we create value. You create a huge value in the US. We do this because there is biodiversity and we should apply this biodiversity to our food. So what I'm saying, and I'm so grateful because maybe there is some of your public in BAKERpedia who is going to say, well, maybe I'm an industrial baker. I should try to have a natural line. Because uneducated people, they don't even know that there is a market for sourdough. How many friends do I have that never ever ate a sourdough bread? They come in my table and they say, Paul, I don't understand. Your bread is the best bread I ever ate in my entire life. And I tell them it is your body responds to true nature of food. Right, Lynn? So I'm not saying you shouldn't massify the food. Obviously, we're 7.7 billion people across the earth. We need to eat. And we need science to do this. We need crops. We need agriculture. We need to do things. But I believe that we need to stop with the money for everything and the limitless growth.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's a true message that I would like to share. You know.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And keep talking about what you want and the truthfulness and the transparency you want in your food. And I believe bakers will cater to that. You know, we have a baker here in town. It's called Dave's Killer Bread. It's an all organic bread company. They're already listening. You know, so the bakers are slowly coming out. But still, we need to hear from people like you on what you don't want in your food, why you don't want it in your food, but also know that there are still going to be bakers that are going to be baking more affordable food products.
No, absolutely. And this I do understand. But again, I mean, and what we're going to share as a comment for this talk is, I think this is the role of a company like yours, which has basically a repository and an educative and spreading vocation. I'm very happy to see that you, as the founder and CEO, you faced your responsibility in debating that. And that already, I take it as a step saying that the natural baking and the traditional baking has a part in the to become industry. And what I hope is there will be a growing share of the industry going back to those things. You told me that some of the bakers are phasing out some of the products. Certainly there is a reason they phase it out. Nobody phases out salt. So why are they phasing out such product? Is it because people don't want it anymore? Is it because it changes the nature of the taste of the bread? Why are they phasing out some products?
I think that it's all communication, marketing, and transparency, you know, and if we can get that figured out as people, you know, I think we would help direct the bakers. So we need to all be transparent, and we need to be all honest and have honest discussion instead of being polarized, instead of, you know, throwing hurtful messages at each other, you know, and understand, you know, what's good, what's acceptable, and what is profitable. You know, those all need to come into play when we run food businesses. And that's the fact that we can't produce anything in the baking industry if it's not profitable, you know. So there needs to be profits for any kind of business for you to actually produce something that people want to eat.
Oh, absolutely. But what I'm saying is, it's profitable to make it right.
It is profitable to make it right, and Dave's Killer Bread has shown that. Yep.
Absolutely, and that's what I wanted to hear from you. Is this recognition, because I was led under the thought that you were potentially, so that we don't have any misunderstanding, defending the issue that it's not sustainable economically to do things right. And that is an adamant disagreement. But no, and we all agree here, and we're on the same line, Lynn. Doing things right.
So let me just add to that, right? It is sustainable, right, to do it right? But it is not as profitable to do it that way. And we know there are bakers out there, and there are capitalists out there that says that they want to see as much profits as possible, right? So you can't fight that. That's always going to be part of the system. So the good part is, you know, I would like to wrap this up. The good part is there are still good bakers out there who can really turn this into a story, who can really turn it for their companies and bake good bread for people. There are bakers like that out there. And I'm talking about industrial bakers.
Yeah, no, no, for sure, and this is what we want. So what I believe, and maybe that's going to be my wrap up. Uh, if I was an industrial of the bread, I would take the parallel with the oil and gas. During 70 years, 80 years, the mega corporation, Exxon, BP, Total, that I've made my career with, they said, oil is there and we don't care about the world. What happened since 2 years' time? People are growing conscious about energy transition, environment, natural greenhouse effect. And their investors are now driving them to pledge that they're going to reduce their emission. And it became a business that they cannot hold based on the pressure of the demands. I believe that the food industry is going to go into the same revolution maybe in 15 years when people will finally understand that their cancer, their Alzheimer, their autoimmune, their fragile colite, blah, 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 are linked to food. And when this is going to happen and percolate through people, and the global level of development of a growing amount of population is going to come with education, people are going to tell to this industry, I want you to drive this crap out of my bread. And my message as a wrap up is industry, listen to this weak signal because it's going to come to you the same way that the oil industry never thought it's going to come to them, and it did. I think that currently the food business believes that they are untouchable, that nobody can challenge their processes, and it's going to happen. And I think that people like you who are helping people driving value from their baking should have this line of thought if they want to prepare a successful future. That's all what I believe as an engineer, an entrepreneur, and somebody who is coming from an industry that is currently in mutation. And I think it's going to happen to yours. But I don't have a crystal ball, so I don't know.
I love it. That's shared wisdom. Awesome.
All right.
I will definitely bring it to my bakers.
And I would be delighted to have a once every 2 year session to see how we're doing. I will be part of your followers.
Okay.
Not radical, of course, and you know that I'm gonna watch at every agent you promote.
Yeah, you're gonna watch what I say. Well, thank you.
But I thank you so much for having given the opportunity to our camp or our side of the story to express ourselves on your medias, and this is extremely honorable.
All right. Well, thank you for coming on. I really appreciate you saying your speaking your point of view and sharing your passionate views on what food should be. Thank you.
So, long life to BAKERpedia. Bye.
All right. Bye.